This playthrough is rated T for teen. It's story time and time for epilogues. Greetings and salutations, viewers. Vauldemare here with a bonus episode of Last Window, The Secret of Cape West. Last time we beat the game, we beat the game. We finished the story of Kyle Hyde, his father, and what he went through and solving the mystery of what was going on inside the hotel itself. And the Scarlet Star was sent off to where all people could appreciate it. But when you beat the game, you unlock epilogue and extras added to the game. You also can play the Pink Rabbit minigame if you unlocked it in the main story mode. You can also play billiards if you want to as well, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah, we got the contents of the game itself. As you can see, we can go... Basically what we can do is we can do... any of the chapters if you want to play them from a different start. So you can also do the billiards right there. Here's the music you can play through for the jukebox and everything like that. So we should have most of the songs unlocked at this point if you want to listen to that. Yeah, most of it's already locked and good to go. Then we got the bookmark section here, which this is the Last Window book itself. So you can read over the story of Last Window. And the thing is, the only way to unlock the epilogue is you, for whatever reason, cannot read the book over the course of the game. You have to wait till you beat it to read it, which is a little odd, but okay. But anyway, Last Window, The Secret of Cape West. Martin Summer, born in Kansas City in 1929 after graduating university and working as an editor at Los Angeles Beat, he penned his debut novel, The Secret Word. 1990 saw his return to the spotlight after a decade spent entirely under the radar. His works on countless movie scripts and his regular columns, together with an expansive knowledge... Expensive? Oh, expansive. I can barely read the text there. Has paved the way for a string of bestsellers. Chapter 1, An Uneasy Feeling. Los Angeles, December 18, 1980, 9 p.m. Twilight fell over the city of Los Angeles, drowning it in a sea of darkest night. Throughout the city, small pinpricks of light fought their way along streets and freeways, accompanied by a hubbub of rattling engines, blaring horns, and incensed yelling. Far away from this chaos, a lone car made its way along quiet side streets and parked up on the curb by Cape West Apartments. As the engine stopped, the door was kicked open and a man emerged, gruffly cursing the cold weather. Clutching his thick jacket around a plain white shirt and black tie, the man reached a gloved hand into the car and withdrew his briefcase. Drawing himself up to his full 6-foot height, he slammed the door shut with his free hand and grasped the lapels of his jacket, defending himself against the bitter cold. Heels dragging with the weight of the world, the man shuffled towards the front door of the building. His name was Kyle Hyde, a door-to-door salesman for Red Crown. Hyde's job took him up and down the Californian coast, but it was this place, Cape West Apartments, specifically room 202, that he called home. As Hyde approached the small staircase leading up to the front door, he stopped and gazed at the sliver of light poking out from between the doors. Damn it, what a day. Hyde was a rational, no-nonsense man. Panic and stress were usually foreign words to him, but today was different. A voice rang out in his head like a broken record, repeating the same phrase over and over. Know what, Hyde? I've had enough of you. You're a bull. You're fired. It was 4 years now since Hyde had packed in his job as a New York detective and moved all the way across the country to California. He had taken the salesman job as an in-betweener, something to put food on the table while he searched for a proper job. And here he was, still doing it. He was honestly surprised it had taken him this long to be fired. He wasn't exactly the best salesman in the world. When Hyde first moved to L.A., he'd been contacted by Ed, an old acquaintance. Ed's offer of a job as a door-to-door salesman had baffled Hyde at first. Hyde had never been a people person, so it seemed like the worst job imaginable for him. He had to admit, though, that Ed's offer was a generous one. Ed was the only person in L.A. who knew Hyde's secret, and yet he was still willing to hire him. Hyde's secret was the one thing keeping him from moving on for the past 4 years. He was in search of his ex-partner, Brian Bradley. Bradley had disappeared 4 years earlier. He was undercover, investigating a crime syndicate called Nile. It was discovered that he was on the take and leaking police information to them. When Hyde found out, he confronted Bradley on a pier and shot him. Bradley fell into the water and Hyde never saw him again. He had been searching for him ever since to ask him the simple question, why'd you do it? Why'd you betray the force in your partner? After Bradley's disappearance, the brass closed the Nile case. Hyde was furious and he quit on the spot. Knowing all this, Ed had no reservations about offering Hyde the salesman job. Ed was an ex-cop as well, having made his way through the LAPD, so perhaps he had felt some sympathy for Hyde. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for Hyde to become complacent. He began slacking off jobs he didn't like, ignoring his pager for extended periods of time, being generally unreliable. It all come to head that very day, with Ed yelling down the phone, "You know what, Hyde? I've had enough of your bull. You're fired!" Ed's angry voice still stinging like a slap across the face. Hyde took a deep breath and began to ascend the stairs to the front door. As he was going up to the door opened and someone came out. Who's that? The person in question was a smartly dressed woman with a wide-brimmed hat and large sunglasses. Hyde's first impression was that she was fairly young and not very subtle about her desire for privacy, if she felt the need to cover up so much as this time of night. The two passed each other on the stair without a word. Hyde grabbed the door handle and paused, turning for another look at the mysterious woman. She was getting into the car at the foot of the stairs. She started the engine and turned on the piercing headlights. As she rolled up her window, Hyde caught a glimpse of her profile. Don't know her. With that, Hyde pushed on the front door, which creaked open. As soon as he saw who was standing in the lobby, he knew his bad day wasn't over yet. Greeting Hyde like an old friend was his neighbor from 201, Tony Wolfe, musician by trade, albeit not a successful one. "Hey man, long time no see," Tony said cheerfully. Tony's lax demeanor always rubbed Hyde the wrong way. The man was practically penniless, and yet his attitude setting still managed to be jammed on cloud 9. Although Hyde reasoned to himself, if Tony had been here the whole time, he might actually be useful for once. Hyde asked about the woman in the hat. Tony responded in typical style, "Lovely lady, no idea who she was, but wasn't she classy?" Tony knew every woman in the building on a first-name basis. If anyone could have identified her, it was him. Hyde, on the other hand, was hardly ever home thanks to his job. As a result, he barely knew any of the other tenants. He had got what he wanted from Tony, so he made for the stairs. "Whoa, man," Tony cut in. "You're taking off already? No chit-chat for your old pal Tony?" Hyde paused, going over what Tony had said. Old pals? After the stunts he pulled on me in the past? Someone needed to be set straight. "Listen, Tony, we just live in the same building," Hyde said. "Don't exactly make us best friends, you know." As 4-year neighbors, Tony clearly thought the two of them were like family. Hyde, of course, thought otherwise. Then Tony asked the question Hyde had been waiting for since the start of the conversation. "Here's the deal," Tony began. "I got this need for a little cash real quick. My mom's sick and had to check into hospital. You know how it is. So anyway, I need to scrape together $1,000 to cover it all." Hyde wasn't buying any of it. 2 weeks earlier, Tony had come to him with a sob story about his little brother being sent to the hospital. Out of the goodness of his heart, Hyde had given him money for a taxi ride. He later found out that Tony had used the cash to take a girl out on a date. "Ah, man, knew I should have gone teetotal," Tony whined. Hyde knew he shouldn't have been surprised, but he still felt cheated. A bar tab, big surprise there. Tony, seeing the obvious signs of Hyde's anger, apologized sincerely. "Cross my heart, I won't try a stunt like that again. You got my word." Yeah, and the rest," Hyde retorted. "Hear the same thing every month. I predict I'll be hearing it next month, too." "Wait, what?" Tony said nonplussed. "There won't be a next month. This month's all we got left." Hyde stared back. "What do you mean all we got left?" Was Tony moving? Possibly to a place with lower rent, given his financial situation? But Tony merely shot Hyde a suspicious look. "Man, I'm talking about the letter Mag sent out. Tell me you got the letter? Would have arrived in your mailbox about a week ago. We all got one." Hyde barely even checked his mail once a week. He wasn't interested in flyers and bills. According to Tony, the landlady, Margaret Patrice, had sent out a letter a week ago. The letter had said that the building was up for sale and asked all residents to pack up and leave. I had no idea. What a day. What a damn day. This was turning out to be the worst day of Kyle Hyde's life, at least since that day at the pier. Fired from his job, kicked out of his apartment. "Hey guys." The voice drifted down the stairs and was followed down by a young, vivacious woman bouncing from step to step. Tony's face lit up. She was Betty Mayer from room 203. She lived down the hall from Hyde and worked in a shop selling fashion accessories. "So what are you guys talking about?" she asked. Before Hyde could protest, Tony told her the whole story. "No way, didn't know?" Betty snorted. "That's so like you, Kyle. You always act so focused. Then again, I guess we all have our quirks." Hyde shrugged it off. Betty was just like Tony, acting like they were all living in a college dorm. He had no time for their antics. Tony and Betty started chatting about the big move. Betty had apparently already found a new place to live. When Tony complained about her not telling him, she gently reminded him of the same thing Hyde had just said, that they were living in the same building, but they weren't really friends. "Anyway, I've got a dash." Whoops. Anyway, I've got a dash. Don't want to be late for my date. Betty headed out the door at top speed, leaving Tony gazing wistfully after her. Hyde knew he was going a bit too far, but he couldn't help himself. Face it, Tony, you don't exactly exude charisma. Tony balked. Yeah, thanks for that, friend. Way to kick a man when he's down, right? He shook his head. Listen, man, I'm off for a walk. Later. Tony took off out the front door. With both the walking loudspeakers gone, Hyde was finally able to think again. He tightened his grip on his briefcase and continued on to the staircase. Shower time, he thought. Maybe I can wash this hellish day away. Good evening, Mr. Hyde. The voice came from behind him, and it belonged to a petite, middle-aged woman in a black dress. Hyde knew the voice right away. Margaret Patrice, the landlady of Cape West Apartments. She had bought up the building when it was still Hotel Cape West and had refurbished it into apartments. As landlady, she lived on the first floor. The other residents generally referred to her as Mags, half out of affection and half out of irony, given her steely personality. Mags had kept the whole building in very good shape over the years, despite its age. She got to the point straight away. Mr. Hyde, I always check the mailboxes when I pass, and yours is practically overflowing. Hyde knew there was no point in arguing with Mags, so he simply nodded and promised he would deal with the matter. Also, Max continued, there was something I wanted you to pass on to you, Mr. Wolf. Please ask him to kindly furnish me with the 4 months' worth of rent that he owes me. Hyde had always been amazed at Max's ability to remain cool and composed, even in frustrating situations like this. Tony was lucky he went out when he did, mused Hyde. But did he have to leave me here to be scolded by the school teacher? It occurred to him that Tony wasn't the only one behind on his rent, and just as he realized that, Mags voiced the thought. By the way, Mr. Hyde, I believe you're 2 months behind in your own rent. I'd appreciate if you could pay me the $400 you owe by the end of the week. Hyde could only nod. Mags nodded back briskly and made a return into her apartment. Before you go, Hyde said, mind if I ask you something? Why did you decide to sell this place all of a sudden? Ah, said Mags. I had originally feared you'd ask. Originally, I had no intention of giving this place up. Hyde wasn't surprised. Cape West Apartments was a 4-story building with a cafe on the first floor. It was quite old, but it had a mellow and relaxing atmosphere to it. The 4th floor had never been renovated and still had the old hotel rooms on it, but almost every other room was full. From Hyde's perspective, it looked like a money machine. Mags continued, but you know, sometimes unexpected things happen and, well, it's complicated. Complicated? What's so complicated? Hyde pressed further about Mag's situation, to which she pointed her finger at him and bluntly replied, It's not easy for a widow like me to take care of a place like this, you know. I can trust you to understand that, can't I? Hyde didn't have too much difficulty understanding her situation. His mother, Jeannie, had raised him on her own after his father died. Seeing what she had gone through firsthand, he wasn't envious of Mag's position. Also, there are land sharks in the area who are putting me under some pressure, and there are other reasons that I will not go into because, frankly, it's none of your concern. Good evening, Mr. Hyde. With that, she turned and walked demurely back into her room, closing the door in what Hyde considered to be an offensively polite fashion. He never could figure out what made him so uneasy around Mags. Maybe it was her dress, her stern hair bun, or her general mannerisms. Hyde wasn't sure. As he had promised, Hyde went to look at his mailbox. He also wanted to see that letter that Tony was talking about. As Mags had said, the mailbox was overflowing with envelopes. Hyde entered the code on the lock, and the mail stack pushed the door open for him, envelopes cascading out all over the floor. Hyde rifled through the envelopes until he found the one for Mags. He ripped it open, pulled out the letter, and read, My dear tenants, after much deliberation, I have chosen to sell this property. The new owner plans to have the building demolished, so it is my unfortunate duty to inform you of the need to vacate at your earliest convenience. Further information will be posted on the notice board in the coming days. December 10th, Margaret Patrice. So it was true. They had to vacate their apartments, and everyone else had known about this for over a week. With a sinking feeling, Hyde made for the stairs and finally managed to get to the 2nd floor without interruption. When he reached the 2nd floor, he nearly ran into someone about to descend the stairs. He recognized the man immediately as Dylan Fitcher, the handyman from room 304. That was all Hyde knew about him. He was quite unassuming. Hyde had noticed a somewhat gloomy manner about the man. He had a tenacity to look down on the floor as he walked. He was carrying a hammer, to which Hyde seemed somewhat suspicious, but upon questioning him, Hyde discovered that Mags had asked Dylan to handle maintenance throughout the building. Dylan explained in his meek voice that he was to look after the building right up until the deeds were signed. I don't like Mags, thought Hyde. Oh, by the way, your door is fine, Dylan murmured before continuing down the stairs. Hyde didn't care as long as it opened and closed. He headed down the corridor and unlocked his door. As he entered the room, something fell to the floor. Reaching down, he picked up the small envelope, which he realized been lodged between the door and the frame. The envelope was blank, with no delivery or return addresses. With the envelope in hand, he entered his room and threw his briefcase down on the table in front of him. Gazing at the battered briefcase, Hyde mused that even it looked tired. It was no wonder he'd been carrying it around with him ever since he came to L.A. and started working for Ed. It had previously belonged to Hyde's late father and had been through its fair share of scrapes with Hyde's. Hyde slipped out of his jacket, absently draped it over the arm of the sofa. Returning the envelope from the door, he ran his finger across the top to open it and withdrew a letter. Item: locate the Scarlet Star which disappeared at Hotel Cape West 25 years ago. An order sheet? Hyde had never received one of these directly. They had always gone through Ed. He wondered whether this was a bad prank. He was snapped out of his thoughts by the phone ringing. It rang once, however, and then stopped. Odd. The light on the answering machine was blinking, indicating there was a message from him, waiting for him. He recognized Rachel's worried voice immediately. Rachel was Ed's secretary and had her own side job, acting as a mediator for Ed and Hyde whenever Hyde was slacking off. Unfortunately, there was only so far she could go when Hyde's latest slip-up had got him fired. He felt it was nice of her to check up on him, though. There was one more message on the machine. Hyde didn't recognize the voice. Kyle Hyde, I have an order for you. The request has been taken directly to your room. An honest order for an item lost 25 years ago. An honest order for an item lost 25 years ago. This was decidedly an odd request. It had to be some kind of joke. The apartment building had indeed been a hotel 13 years prior, but finding something from 25 years ago was an unthinkable task. Hyde didn't even have the slightest idea what this Scarlet Star was. Hyde went to bed earlier that night. He knew he didn't have to wake up for work the next day, but the long day had left him feeling exhausted. But no matter how long he closed his eyes for, sleep refused to claim him. The day's events repeating over and over, challenging his weary mind to make any sense of them. Losing his job, having to move out, and then there was the order sheet. When Hyde moved to L.A. and became a salesman for Red Crown, he had also accepted the underlying job offer. On the surface, Red Crown dealt in door-to-door sales. However, Ed's other business was a secret one, searching for missing items that didn't want to be found. This was Hyde's other job. But receiving an order directly was unheard of. The clients would contact Ed, and he would assign Hyde to the job. However much Hyde mulled it over, no answers would present themselves. He eventually gave up trying to sleep and simply lay there, gazing at the ceiling. And then we got there's a little secret thing you can do with the classified when you read each chapter. Classified. Notes concerning Kyle Hyde. Read only if confronted by difficulties. A reward may become available if this information remains classified. But we've already beaten the game, so we can look this over. Notes concerning Kyle Hyde. Introductions. The notes in this envelope consist of extracts from extensive research carried out by the author of the novel, Martin Summer. In these notes, the author endeavors to give his readers a picture of the real Kyle Hyde, the man who inspired this novel. It is hoped that these sealed episodes will help render gain a better understanding of the main man behind the protagonist. So, Martin Summer is the character from Hotel Dusk 215, for those who are curious. So, notes concerning Kyle Hyde, Part 1, Hands-on Investigation. In 1969, a 22-year-old Kyle Hyde joined the NYPD and was assigned to the 89th Precinct. Now the 89th of the late 60s was a rough place. Every single person there was a cop in body and soul. The force was in their blood. It was in this rough, no-nonsense atmosphere that Kyle had the basics of policing drummed into him. The first case Kyle was put in charge of at the 89th was the murder investigation connected to drug trafficking. Using the attention to detail instilled in him by his superiors, Kyle began his investigation of the crime scene. I conducted an interview with Kyle's superior at the time, Willie Taylor. He remarked that he'd never seen anyone so meticulous until he met Kyle Hyde. According to Willie, it was perfectly normal for officers to miss small clues and details in the first case, but Kyle was different. Despite being a rookie, Hyde never had the decency to keep his desk clean. He was a mess, but as soon as he hit a crime scene, he did a complete 180. Calm, campaign, meticulous. That was our Officer Hyde. The man was inflammable when he confronted with the secret door mechanism. There were 2 buttons on it, and a combination of presses required to open the door changed every day. Kyle just walked up to the door, cool and collected, pushed both buttons at the same time, and the door opened. Then, when he was searching for the scene, he found the murder weapon before any of the other cops, hidden inside a sofa. Genius! But I didn't congratulate him, didn't commend him, didn't give him nothing. Hyde was the kind of guy who didn't need no ego boost, so I took him aside, showed him the gun he'd found at the scene, and gave him a solid grilling for wasting hours searching for the thing when it was in such an obvious place. The guy couldn't believe what he was hearing. I told him always search the crime scene with a fine-tooth comb. There's always a clue there, always. And once you have that clue, you're sailing. Don't do it half-assed. Don't give it to the rookies. Do it yourself, hands-on. If Kyle's experience at the 89th Precinct taught him anything, it was that. Even after taking his leave of the police force and starting to find things for Ed, he lived by principle. When I contacted his colleague, Rachel, to ask about his work ethic, she had the following to say: Kyle would never leave a job half done. Kyle would just keep trucking until the bitter end. I knew, of course, that she was referring not to his sales strategy, but to his less well-publicized job. Rachel corroborated Willie's story about Kyle's meticulous nature. To support it, she told me about a time when he'd been asked by a woman in his building to find a piece of lost jewelry. He turned the apartment upside down until he found it. But Rachel told me with a small sigh, he was never any good at tracking down a woman's heart. While I was conducting this research, I happened upon another worthwhile piece of information. It concerns a tragic event in Ed's past that might well have set him on the path towards setting up his side business. Ed Vincent left the LAPD in 1972, the same year his girlfriend Catherine was killed. The murderer was a man who Ed had sent to jail for theft. Upon finishing his sentence, the man discovered where Ed lived and bluffed his way in. Ed returned home later to find Catherine dead. The murderer was later caught and still in jail today. According to a colleague of Ed's, Tony Caraway, Ed later found a letter among her belongings that said this: You always say your life is too dangerous and I'd never be happy if we were together. I'm sick of that excuse, Ed, so if you can't propose to me, then I'll do it to you. I love you, Ed. I know that we can live life to the fullest together. No matter where our perfect life tries to hide, no matter how fast it runs, I know we'll track it down. I'm unsure as to whether Ed ever shared this particular detail about his past with Kyle Hyde. All right, I think I'm gonna split up these bonus episodes into just chapters, and then we'll do the epilogue and stuff like that. So, all right, that's it for chapter 1. Next episode will be chapter 2. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.